Hi, everyone. Welcome to Atrium Research's YouTube channel. Atrium Research is an equity research firm based out of Toronto, which provides institutional quality equity research on a variety of industries from metals and mining, energy, consumer products, tech, and many more. We also write thematic research on a variety of interesting themes, and all of this can be found on our website at atriumresearch.ca. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Robert Boyd, the CEO of Endurance Gold, which trades on the TSXV under the symbol EDG. We initiated coverage on Endurance earlier in the year with a buy rating and a 50-cent per share target price. And nice to have you here, Robert.
Well, thanks very much, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here and provide an update to you and your listeners.
Yep, good to have you. So yeah, with that said, I'm going to leave it to you to walk us through the deck, and I'll hop in if I have any questions throughout the presentation.
Fine, I'm happy to do that. Well, Endurance Gold is a venture capitalized junior mining company, and our prime focus right now is our Reliance Gold Project, which is a property we're exploring near Goldbridge, BC. I will be making some forward-looking statements, so there's my standard disclaimer. The company has about 145 million shares issued and outstanding, and working capital at the end of March of around 4.4 million. I guess the key point in this slide is that insiders, three of us as insiders, own about 55% of the company. I own about 6%, and then two other directors collectively, the other directors collectively own about 50%, but in particular two of them. We have options outstanding and warrants, and with those fully diluted as of May, would be about 159.7 million. So our key project, the Reliance project, which I mentioned, is a new surface discovery we've got, and it's located about 10 kilometers from the historic Braylorn camp, which has produced over 4 million ounces of historic production and represents the largest historic gold producer in the province of British Columbia. And that project's only a 4-hour summer drive north of Vancouver, and the last 40 kilometers or so is over the Hurley Road. So you need a four-wheel drive with good sturdy tires for that road, and if you don't, then it's you add a couple of extra hours to go out through Lillooet and back around on better quality roads. So it's a very well located project in an historic orogenic gold camp, and actually a well-known orogenic gold camp with the Braylorn Pioneer Mine complex. And I'll touch on that model a little later. So our program activities really only started on this project in 2020. It had a bit of history from 1985 to 2008, with a limited focus in that historic activity over only about 100 meters of a trend that we identified as having real prospectivity. So we moved this to a discovery stage gold project now, right with new surface discoveries right on surface in a productive gold camp. And since 2020, we've systematically expanded that potential from 100 meters to 2 kilometers or so, with surface channel sampling with excellent results, an RC program with excellent results of about 84 holes. And we now moved to the phase with 3 phases of diamond drilling. We're in the midst of our 3rd phase right now. We have assay results on 64 diamond drill holes, primarily at the 2 Eagle and Imperial zones, which I'll touch on, with really excellent drilling result statistics, which I'll summarize. And our focus to date is the Eagle area discovery, which we expanded from surface channel sampling in 2020 to defining it over about 550 meters of strike. And now we're opening that system up at depth. And there's definitely some open pit potential based on what we've defined to date already there. So that drilling's shifting for this year, the drilling's shifting to growth on strike and at depth with the continued success that we've had on the project. So I mentioned the drilling statistics, and this is a really important part about this project. For an orogenic gold system, the drilling statistics are excellent. We've had, of the 64 holes, 44 of them, about 70% have had significant gold intersections. So that will be approximately better than 3.4 gram per ton gold over greater than 3 meter width, or roughly 10 gram meter. So we don't include a hole in there unless it's mineralized over at least 3 meter width. And then 13 of those 64 holes have had excellent intersections, and I actually list those intersections there. Most of those intersections there, they range from high-grade intervals over narrower woods, and narrow wood for us would be like 4.2 meters of 17.28 grams, right up to very encouraging, near what we assume are near estimated true widths of around 24 meters. So anywhere from 4 to 24 meters wide zone is what we've been defining today. And one anomalous hole there that's much wider width, but was drilled more down along the trend of the zone to demonstrate continuity. But you can see the really excellent holes with greater than typically greater than 8 grams over anywhere from 10 to 24 meters. So.
Yeah, and if I may add there, Robert, I think in our initiation report we had 11% of all of the drill holes in this period were over 100 gram meters.
That's right, and
pretty staggering results.
Yeah, and in fact, these statistics are shifting at pretty closer to 20% now, based on the holes we've hit so far. Because our last press release, and for the drilling results we've drilled to date this year, 2 out of the 4 holes we intersected had better than 70 gram meter type hits or good widths, and one of those is the 17.2 gram I mentioned there at over 4.2 meters, and the other was 8.9 over 9.3 meters with a higher grade core. So that figure on the left shows our surface discovery and what we got in terms of these channel samples on surface with the gold and surface outcrops. And you can see that Eagle Zone has now been defined just on the surface channel samples alone at over 500 meters of strike. And our drilling has demonstrated is about a 550 meter strike within a broader system. So I'll sort of touch on where those different zones are. This is a photo looking southeast over the Carpenter Lake Reservoir, which is a BC hydro reservoir for a large dam that produces about 17% of the lower mainland power consumption. So we're in an industrial area, lots of logging activity. You can see actually evidence of it on this photo, but there's lots of ongoing logging activities in this camp as well. And our key structure is this royal shear, and you can see a very strong linear associated with associated with a mineralized trend, which separates a kind of sedimentary terrain from a mafic volcanic terrain, and that mafic volcanic terrain shows very strong alteration associated with it, which shows up as that buff coloration on this figure. There's other parallel structures that are mineralized, both on this photo and several others that we control now on our property. This kind of shows the 2 key zones that we've got over what we call the Royal Shear Trend, which is just one of these about 5 structures we've got on control on our property that have gold potential. And the Eagle Zone is shown here is that about that 550 meter trend on the bottom right of this figure. And then another zone that we've got is the Imperial Zone, which was one that was actually discovered in 1985, but poorly explored by a non-conventional type of exploration prospector at the time. He never recognized the real potential along the structure, although we did prospect it with a bulldozer, and we actually, our discovery at the Eagle Zone included that 5.88 gram per ton over 31 meter I show on there, which was a channel sampling that we completed on an outcrop that he had exposed but never recognized, and I'll try to demonstrate to you why that was. There was another outcrop that we sampled that was around 4.88 grams over 23.5 meters. Now that's not a true width, it's kind of an oblique channel sample across a shallower dipping zone, but it indicates the strength of this mineralizing system, and it was there in outcrop but not recognized because it's not associated with veins, and that's what's unique about this system. That gap between Eagle and Imperial is largely undrilled, and that's one of the things we hope to accomplish this year with our program of designated about 15,000 meter program this year to test both the near surface potential between Eagle and Imperial, but also chase and open these systems up at depth. So this is what that zone looks like in outcrop. You can actually dig out this oxidized material with a shovel quite easily. And that's the outcrop with the talus fines showing in the upper cut of a road that was actually put in the 1980s, but never sampled. And this one was one of the ones we channel sampled and got to 4.88 over 23.5 meters, and the higher grade, one of those higher grade samples was right here in the hanging wall of that shallower dipping shear zone that we're showing in here. And it's not a pure shear, it's actually a breccia system or a cataclastite breccia that has some late sweats and of quartz stibnite veins. So it's a mineralizing event that's quite gold rich and is associated with antimony, and doesn't particularly look impressive when you see it on surface, and not until you get the assays you realize its potential. So we've now completed 64 holes, and I mentioned the statistics already, but 52 of those are being up at the Eagle area where we've got assay results, and 11 of those diamond drill holes are at the Imperial zone, where about 8 of the 11 are significantly mineralized, with the 3 key intercepts I mentioned here at the Imperial zone. 2 of those that we've got out of our current year's program, where we're opening that system up significantly at depth. So essentially 44 of the 64 with significant intersections, and 13 of the 64 with excellent drill intersections. So this is just a slide to get you oriented for the next set. I'm going to be talking about Eagle and Imperial separately. So this just shows you what some of the mineralization looks like up at that Eagle zone. It's a breccia system, both of fine grain breccias and also a later rebrecciation of breccias that are often healed with this light wash of white quartz that we show in here that almost looks like epithermal textures, but they're actually high level exposures, high level type gold system, or epizonal orogenic type gold system, where you get healing of these breccious textures. And this is another one of these kind of 2 different types of breccias. These are the cataclastite breccias, or essentially fault breccias that break up pre-existing quartz veins, and those quartz veins show up as fragments in these breccias with carbonate veins, and then also a late brecciation of really altered wall rock and these breccias, and earlier breccias themselves, healed by this white coxcomb quartz breccias that we see here. So just to focus on what it is we're exploring, there's that Eagle zone that I showed you on the plan map, and the Imperial zone. They're largely untested between the 2 zones, so we want to test that gap in there. We think there's potential based on this still elevated soil geochemistry in that area. And you can see we've now opened up this system based on our drilling to date, and in the last 3 seasons, we've opened this up to about 1.5 kilometers of strike with gold, significant gold intersections, both open at the northwest and southeast end. So we still haven't closed the system off along strike. Our focus now is to open it up within these areas where we're showing these balloons. And we're now in the process of doing deeper drilling at the Eagle zone to kind of demonstrate that system continues at depth. And we've also, our first phase of drilling was to test down at Imperial, and we did open that system up at depth and reported some very good intersections there, including of 17.28 gram per ton gold over 4.2 meters, which included a higher grade core of about 35 grams per ton gold over 1.3 meters. So that's a one of the deepest intersections now in the property. That, together with a deeper hit further down the hole, about 4.8 over 2.3 meters, is the deepest penetration of the system, and demonstrates the Imperial zone is at least 200 meters depth, and our intersections up at Eagle suggest that we've got the gold mineralizing event another 500 or 600 meters higher in elevation. So we're already demonstrating a gold system that's got vertical potential of at least 700 meters. So it is not an epithermal type system, it's an epizonal orogenic system. So that and this just highlights that 700-meter vertical extent I was telling you about, and the 550-meter trend of that Eagle Zone that's got most of the drilling. And it's important to emphasize up till the end of 2022, most of the driller sections we had in our in the bag, so to speak, were all less than 70 meters below surface, and that highlights, and a lot of those even less than that up at the Eagle Zone. So it highlights the potential for a portion of that Eagle Zone that we've already defined to have open pit mining potential.
Yep.
So just to back up on this slide, just the next slide I wanted to show you is the Imperial Zone. And this just gives you a feeling for essentially how one zone that's been relatively well drilled historically, and a lot of these holes on here we can't rely on because they're historic work that was never properly geo-referenced. But we show the intersection that we've got here at 8.98 grams per ton over 9.3 meters here at depth, and another higher one where we've got 8.47 over 24.9 meters. So we've reconfirmed that that zone is there with modern, properly controlled and surveyed drilling activity that hadn't been done in the past. And then we also chased the system up dip near surface and got intersections like 7 grams over 4 meters or wider, within a wider zone of 3 grams over 13 meters. So we demonstrated that system continues up near surface. And now with the really deep hole that doesn't show on this section, that hole 66, we've demonstrated that that's a very significant intersection. That's about 111 meters down dip from this hole number that graded 8.98 over 9.3 meters, and about 70 or 80 meters away from this hole number 11 that ran 2 grams over 24 meters. So we got that hit of 17 grams over 4.2 meters. So this system really is opening up, and that's within a much wider mineralized zone of about 15 meters. So the system's wide open. We're still trying to understand which way the fatter and better grades of the system plunge, and that's part of what we're trying to open up now with our drilling program, is understand in this big system where are the fatter zones and how do they plunge and dip within this larger structure that looks like it's mineralized over at least 1.5 kilometers of strike.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been talking about epizonal orogenic, and I guess just to be clear, what does that mean? And this kind of shows you that the standard models, academic models, that really only started to develop on high-level orogenic gold systems or epizonal equivalents in the 90s and late 80s is when the model started to develop. That, hey, there's sometimes these orogenic gold systems have shallow exposures, especially in younger terrains. You don't typically see that in the Archean, but in the younger rocks like we've got in BC and Australia and Newfoundland, the younger orogenic gold systems may often have an epizonal type presentation, often within a brittle deformation regime, as opposed to the deeper typical Archean systems, which are in a more broad ductile regime with crack and seal veins. So what's happened here in our camp is there was a study done in 2017 by well-known academics, Craig Hart and Richard Goldfarb, in a Geoscience BC report that studied this camp, including prospects in our district here that we're working on. And they said they recognized this orogenic type setting and said, look, the age and fluid chemistry of both the high-level Reliance that we're onto here and the Braylor and Pioneer, they're identical age and fluid chemistry, indicating they're just different expressions, different elevation expressions on deposition of the same kind of system. However, Braylor and Pioneer is high-grade veins that are crack and seal narrower veins where it's expressing itself at Reliance in the form of breccias and wide zones of breccias and crackle brecciated or overprints on top of these other breccias. So multiple phases of mineralization in the higher levels. And we have that antimony association. And what's the analogy? Of course, the analogy is Fosterville is one of the well-known ones that's been quite a success recently for Kirkland Lake Gold and now Agnico Eagle. But it started as one of these fine grain gold systems associated with antimony near surface, and was mined for 10 years or so before the mining took them down plunge on one of the key chutes, and it transitioned into a coarser gold system at depth, and what became what is defined as the Swan Zone on that. And you can see that the exploration activity that we've done on our Reliance project, when you just put our section up against this, we're literally just starting on this in terms of demonstrating if this has got the kind of potential for a Fosterville analogy. We're really only just started on the exploration of this, and in terms of opening up the potential of this system. And so they've currently got resources and mined this down to 1.3 kilometers depth. So we, as I said, vertical drill depth of our 2020 holes at this point is typically about less than 70 meters.
Mm-hmm.
So the lots of open potential to demonstrate when you get these orogenic gold systems, they do have depth continuity. It's just when you're in an epizonal one, there's the potential for that depth continuity to transition into a coarse gold system at depth. So just a little bit of a teaser just to show you that often these epizonal orogenic systems are associated with stibnite, and these are very not typically representative of what we've got in our property and what our mineralization is like, but these coarse crystals that are a late pulse in the mineralizing system, in this case, coarse stibnite crystals associated with iron carbonate veins. And this is actually a grab sample we picked up on one of our other parallel structures that's got gold associated with it. And we haven't got that project advanced to drill stage, but that's part of what we're trying to do with our program this year, is open up those parallel structures and identify not only this Reliance structure that we've got a 1.5 to 2 kilometer trend, but start building parallel structures and see if there's potential to start making discoveries on those associated with prospects like this. So really, what are we? We've got an outstanding new exploration discovery in an historically productive multi-million ounce orogenic gold camp. It's associated with a really strong iron carbonate sericite alteration, which is a classic association of orogenic systems. In our case, with sulfidization, breccia, and antimony, indicate this epizonal orogenic setting in a brittle structural regime. And the epizonal comparables are Fosterville, which we've already shown in the previous slide, and now these recent Newfoundland discoveries that are likely shallower orogenic type gold systems as well. The model provides potential for a major gold system with good depth continuity, and our RC and diamond drilling have delivered a real high percentage of significant and excellent intersections. The Eagle Zone's now 550 meters. We hope to join that system up with Imperial and understand how those systems relate to each other through this continued drilling. All the systems are wide open, both Eagle and Imperial at depth. And our 2023 diamond drilling program is active. Our plan is about a 15,000 meter program, and we're maybe about 4,000 meters into that. Based on assays, we've got about 3,000. In our last press release, I think we mentioned about 3,200 meters drilled. We're past that now, of course. And these new parallel structures have the potential to be upgraded to drill targets for future growth on this orogenic epizonal orogenic gold camp.
Great, thank you, Robert. And yeah, I just had a couple questions to follow that.
Sure.
Just from more of a bird's eye view, because obviously the mineralization's there. You have the drill results to prove it, and you're continuing to drill it this year and into the future here. But from a bird's eye view, in terms of infrastructure as well as community relations, can you just touch on that a little bit? And the reason I bring it up is a lot of people might be a little fearful of operations or development companies in the Golden Triangle and the different risks associated with getting those projects up and running. But you guys being in southern BC, there's a lot of benefits there.
Yeah, I really only touched on it in the introduction, but we can pretty much drill year round. We can drive onto the property year round and work on the property year round from existing roads and forestry roads that are kept open year round. There's active logging in the area that we're working on the south shore of Carpenter Lake Reservoir. We're only 5 kilometers away from the La Joy Dam, which is another one of BC hydroelectric facilities. In fact, the first one they built in this valley. and it services the whole upper part of the Bridge River Valley with power. We're close to the community of Goldbridge, only 4 kilometers from Goldbridge. In fact, the local hotel and bar and night facility is only 5 kilometers from our drill setups. So we're very well located. We can operate on this property year round. It's a drier, slightly drier climate, so for the Coast Range and the Shadows. So it doesn't end up with a monster snowpack like you might get at Whistler and Pemberton. We're in behind in the snow shadow. And the industrial activity of historic mining, logging, and hydroelectric indicate that from a BC government's perspective, it's really open to development in the historic land use plans that have gone on in this area. We have an exploration agreement with the First Nations, one of the First Nations in the area that has claims on this area, the Bridge River First Nation. We also have been working with the Shala First Nation, which is the closest community, but over the structural divide. And to date, our manpower component on our property has been about 23% First Nation. The exploration agreement we have takes us through to a full feasibility study, and then we'd have to look at impact benefit agreements and things like that in the future. Our relationship's good. Our experience so far with the First Nation and other local communities is everybody's pro-development. But there are challenges in the district, and the challenges are primarily accommodation and things like that. So those are the issues that we're working through our exploration agreements with the First Nation, and also aspirational agreement with the Bridge River Valley Association, which is kind of the local municipal government, to work with them and the other advocates in our camp to address these accommodation issues and make sure that the facilities exist for upgrades to the power dam, building of our project, and building of other mine projects in the camp. So.
Right. Yeah, no, it's great. And that's half the reason why I like the story so much. It's just from a risk standpoint of getting this, to an economic study stage, and then ultimately to permitting and a production decision. It's a lot more seamless than some of these other jurisdictions in Canada and elsewhere in the world. So yeah, with that, Robert, thanks for walking myself as well as the viewers through the Endurance story. I'm looking forward to a news-heavy back half of the year with all the drilling to come, and of course, continued excellent drill results with that. And yeah, it sounds like an exciting time ahead for you. We wish you the best of luck. And then lastly, just for our followers, if you haven't seen our research on Endurance Gold, please visit our website at atriumresearch.ca. You can find all our research notes on there. And Robert, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. All the best, Ben. Take care.